Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And we are live. Welcome to the Monday BrainDrive Development Call. We do these calls every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And this is where we update on the progress from a development standpoint on the BrainDrive ecosystem from the previous week and decide what we're going to be focused on for the next week. I'm Dave Waring, and I'm one of the co-creators of BrainDrive here.
I'm David Jones. I'm the other co-creator, and I handle the tech side.
Yep, and I'm on the operations
Yes.
side. Our mission here at BrainDrive is to make it easy to build, control, and benefit from your own AI system. So that's what we're all about. And if you're not familiar with us, we have an MIT licensed open source system to build your personal AI system on top of and monetize and build businesses on top of and add additional users and everything. We're working towards our V1 release, but we are live on GitHub, and I'll include all the links to a short description of BrainDrive video that we have, as well as our GitHub, etc., in the description section of the video. And with that, we'll go ahead and jump into our update for the work of, or I'm sorry, the celebrations from
Yeah.
last week that we always like to start with. Anything from your end, Dave?
We had the plug-in. First of all, we were able to move from our previous AI chat, which we had always agreed had some quirks on it like that, and we moved over to a more official version. In fact, I can go ahead and where they go. Let's go and share that one. This will probably after this next series of updates, will become the more official version. We have personas coming, so we want to do a few more tweaks on this before it really goes hard and heavy. But this will replace the older version, which has a few quirks. We don't like it for several reasons, and I'm pretty sure the users would agree once they play with it.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was a good switch.
Yep, and my celebrations also on the back of that, just getting the plugin to the point where we're able to actually have some third-party developers come in and start helping us build on this. So, we have the system ready for developers who want to build plugins. We've contracted out a few plugins that we would like to build as BrainDrive. You're
Yep.
welcome to start building on this. And Dave also has a video, which I'll include a link to also in the description section, walking you through how to go about building plugins, etc. So it was a really big milestone last week to be able to get this, into the hands of other developers. And, Dave's still carrying most of the project on his own, but to have a little bit of extra help and hopefully get that community development flywheel spinning is going to be a big deal for us. How about challenges from last week? Any challenges? You want to stop sharing why you say
Oh
that?
yeah. Yep. Really, the biggest challenge was let's get out of there. That should stop there. Uh, CapCut. Because I wanted to do that video, the first one, and I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake. And I did the normal. It's like, okay, let me do 15 seconds, make sure everything, listen to it. It was good. And then I do 23 minutes. And I go back to it. Let's look at it. It was like no sound whatsoever. And I did three videos like that because I was like, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I hit a setting. And then finally went back to OBS and got it right. So that was the big challenge right there because it was like one of those things. This is lunch. I should be done with this before 1. And it
Right.
turned out like 4 before I got eventually got finished with it.
Yeah, video is one of those things that like it just takes way longer than
Yeah.
you ever think it's
As soon
going.
as you think you have it all ironed out, you don't.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, on my side, we continue we're hoping to have, some contractors that we work, on a continuing basis on projects with, but also, make this a very flexible thing where, there's community people that are building on it, there's contractors, there's Dave, maybe eventually we have, a couple more full-time developers working on this. Unfortunately, I don't want to mention names, but we've had some people sort of dropping out and ghosting us, once they're, which is
Part of any business.
par for the course, but also like it's a little surprising because this person I'm thinking of in particular was just seemed very excited to be working
Yeah.
on the project. So we'll see. Hopefully, he's okay and
Yep.
there's not, anything going on there. But that's always a challenge. But that's part of, if there's no challenges, then also there's probably no reason to be doing it because it's already been done before.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
Um, all right, cool. So with that, you want to bring up the roadmap, or I will. Let me just bring the roadmap
Okay.
up here. And we'll also include a link to this in the description section. And let's just talk about where we're at with the roadmap. I'll share the screen here. So version one, giving developers access done,
Yep.
self-updating system done. Version point three, the plugin manager operational. That's what we were celebrating. There's still a little bit of a caching issue there, but
Yep.
nothing that's preventing anybody from developing on
Yep.
that. And point four.
Point four is all done now, basically. Except for Concierge does not have its own little home yet.
Yep.
Uh, and then we're on five right now, and I won't call five a pausing point, but it more or less is because of the fact that we have so many developers now getting involved, where we have some functionality to get in place for them, such as like we did the encryption last week. So that if a developer comes along, they're creating a plugin and they come to some conclusion that they want to encrypt a certain field in the database because it's holding sensitive data, they don't have to write their own encryption routine. It's already in there. They just add one line right now, and that's the hard part. But one line, and they can encrypt an entire field right on the fly. And then I'm going once I test that out and I like it and get feedback, I will look to that being even a database entry so it has a front end. So they just simply select it. I'm going to encrypt this field, and that will be I I, I won't call it hack proof, but it'll be at least secured from people such as
Okay.
and API keys are API keys. This can be right now. We're just using API keys for other providers. But let's say you were using a therapist and you do not want anybody to have access to your little therapy sessions, you would be able to encrypt that field then, and it would no longer be in plain text. So if somebody went through and looked at your database, it's just a bunch of jarbled text at that point. And you can put your deepest soul, spill it to the AI and not worry about anybody else reading it.
Okay. So is this an additional bullet point that we should have on point five?
Probably. I'll
Okay.
add them because I already have it on my list that I'm building over here for like what I did last week and then next week and then the week after, and I need to update five. So we see that how it's because we were talking about changes coming because we had changed a little bit of our focus on developers.
Yep. Yep. So we've decided, just for anyone who's watching this, that our V1 release is for what we call our Katie Carter persona, which is a content creator who wants to use their own AI system to build and write and market their content. But what we need for Katie Carter is a lot of additional plugins and development
Hmm.
work. So we've switched a little bit of our focus to our Adam Carter persona,
Yep.
who wants to own and control their own AI system, but also knows how to build on top
Yep.
of these open source AI systems. So that's what Dave's talking about
Yeah,
there.
and then Hello World video is going to be necessary. I do not know how long it's going to take. It's going to be one of those where I'm just going to sit down and it might turn out to be an hour and a half video, or it might be 45 minutes, but I'm just going to go from start to finish, let everybody see every mistake possible that you can make that I make so that they see how to get through them as well. Because it's like, it's pretty easy as long as you know what to do. And I've
Right.
been doing this since day one. So to prevent that is where I would gloss something over. They can see the mistake. It's like, okay, the AI is going to go this direction if you do it by AI or vibe coding, and then this is how you easily fix this type thing.
Right.
So,
So
yep,
basically going through and building a plugin, a Hello World
yep,
plugin from start to finish.
yep.
Cool. All right. Anything else for this week from your side or updates from last week?
The only thing code wise, when we did video, we did the job descriptions, of course, to get other plugin developers in the mix. The encryption for next week, I'm going into basically data, so that every plugin can have its own metadata. Every page can have its own page data. That I realize it's like afterwards how important that would be because of how I know you talk about it and I know I do it is I will sit here on a desktop for a little bit, but I want to get up and move. And I have a tablet, I have a laptop, I have a phone. And I want the same thing I see on my desktop as far as data goes, the information. As soon as I stand up, I don't have to do anything else except for log in, and it's there, ready and waiting for me to go.
And would that be the system would still be running on your main machine at
Yep,
that point,
you're sure.
right?
Yeah, you basically have a server, so to speak, or just where one instance constantly runs. But in your house, or if you're doing it on the cloud, then anywhere, you would be able to log in from any device. And if you were halfway through something on a page, it would basically save it in the cloud for you. So when you log in on another device, you'd be able to continue.
Yeah, I guess just non-technical here,
Yeah.
but if it's accessing the same machine, why wouldn't it show the same thing that's on that machine?
Because how React most systems like this let's say are stuck in the browser. Like let's say you were using Firefox as your browser and you are filling out a form. Now if you change to a phone all of a sudden it would not know what
I
that
see.
form. So what we're going to
Because it's storing stuff in the browser to make it
yep.
easy, faster, local, all that type of stuff.
Exactly. However, you and I are probably an example of users that normal users, you have a phone, you have a tablet, you have a laptop, you have a desktop maybe, but you at least have the other devices. And so the ability for you to easily mindlessly switch and continue with whatever you're doing. And that's one of the advantages of having a local owned system.
Cool. All right. And then from my side for last week, so I looked into image generation for my guide to local AI
Yep.
systems, which is done and basically just once we have V1 of BrainDrive out, we'll put that in there, we'll publish that, and that'll be start to finish on getting up and running with a local AI system using BrainDrive if you want, or using
Yep.
whatever other system that you want. We even talk about some of the interfaces that are out there and a heavy focus on Olama for the back end.
Yep.
So I was hoping that I could create some images for that guide. So that's really where my head was at, was not I'm going to do a guide on creating images locally,
Ah.
but like, can I use AI to create the images for these guides? And what I found was if you want to do more creative type images where it's like you have a sports drink and you want someone holding it and smiling on the beach, AI is really good for that.
Hmm.
And it's gotten way better because I've done
Yes.
types of images. But if you have like, I want to create an infographic and it has the 5 reasons that you should use your own AI system in the infographic with the BrainDrive logo. Like, even if I give it the BrainDrive logo and some pretty heavy direction, like, it's not very good.
No, and it came a long ways from what it used to be. However, for using for infographics, it is not even close. To anything professional and polished, it
Yeah.
is. I'd say it's at 50%. It's not even close to beyond that point.
Correct. Which is what I found. And
Yeah.
I also watch some videos because I know with the writing stuff, it's like people say it's not good at writing, but they just like read a 2 sentence prompt and expect it to write the whole article. I know the same thing is true for images, but even the people that I saw, like I haven't seen anyone, and if anyone out there has seen, doing infographics with text that, really look on the same level. And also Canva makes it pretty easy to just drag and drop icons and blah blah blah. So it's like if I'm having to do 5 pages of prompting, it's like
Yeah.
at that point, does it even matter? So I switched over and started spending some of my time on um, putting together my writing process.
Hmm.
This is both for, oh, wow, it's this signed out, huh? All right, let me make sure yep, we are still streaming. For some reason, my doc signed out though, so let me go into a different browser just so I don't mess anything
For
up
me,
there.
I find that to be Monday morning.
Is that what it happened?
Google signs us out.
Huh. All right. Well, the good thing is it didn't sign out the live stream.
Yep.
Okay, for that. Yes. Okay. and sign back in here. Okay. Hmm. It's never easy.
Like we were saying, if this was easy, we wouldn't be.
Right. There we go. So I have like my writing process here. Decide on the persona.
Yep.
What are they trying to accomplish with this guide? What background knowledge do they have? Are they actively seeking out a solution? If they're searching, what are they searching for? Like this is the keyword research. What other content is out there addressing the topic? Strengths and weaknesses of that content, content gaps, doing the outline, writing the intro, writing the rest of the article, then coming back and removing all of the fluff,
Yeah.
images, linking out to external resources, linking to internal resources, optimizing the article for keywords, and choosing a great title. So this is just like a brain dump of like, what's my process,
Yep.
right? And then I'm coming up with prompts for each of these things as I go through it.
Oh yeah.
And I decided to write a guide on how to host your AI system in the cloud. So, talking about the different options, I think there's a lot of confusion about like there's the AI models that you have to host the inference, and then
Hmm.
there's the interface, and one's really complicated and it can be expensive, but hosting the interface is really easy,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Um, so that's, and also I'm learning about all this, as I do it. So we have the persona. It should be pretty easy to create a prompt to create a persona where we ask the Katie Carter like a series of questions to dial in her persona that she's writing for. And then same thing, a prompt to help determine what this person is trying to accomplish. And I found that I've been using O3 does a good job of going out to Reddit. And like I thought that they weren't allowed to like scrape it and stuff, but like they definitely are
Oh,
because it's
OpenAI has an agreement with Reddit.
okay.
That's where the difference is.
Well, it's a big deal
Yep.
because in terms of user research for anything people talk about on Reddit, you can see like what are the questions that they're asking, what's their level of understanding, what are the like so a lot of that. So anyway, so I want to get as close to I can about, for Katie, it's not going to be um, you know, here's a prompt, go write the whole thing. Like this is a
Yeah.
professional writer,
Yep.
and it's meant to act as that co-pilot. And I think
Yep.
that's what's missing out there from a lot of these tools. And so I think once I'm done with this, we'll have a really good tool for BrainDrive that should be pretty easy to build into BrainDrive. But two, I think, this is my area of expertise, and we'll have some really good content around like if you're like, here's how you use this if you want to write, but here's how you create something like this if you're an expert that's really unique and value add on top of BrainDrive.
Yeah, because it's basically a workflow at
Yeah,
the end of the day, which you
exactly.
can that part you can cookie cut to what if you're into food recipes and whatever
Right.
like that, you can take the workflow, fit it to food recipes, and run.
Right.
And that's
So
what what
yeah, go ahead.
okay, because that's what AI is like. So AI is basically just software development from the 90s on steroids. It's
Yeah.
like it will improve your workflow. It just won't do it for you.
Yeah.
So you have if you are running around going, "Hey, this should be I should be able to give it a title and it writes the whole article." That doesn't exist because there's too much that goes into writing and content to
Yeah.
ever think one title is enough.
Well, and also if it does whatever it does with that is like the generic thing that
Yeah,
anyone can do,
yep.
right? There's no extra expertise from your side. You're adding no value there.
And everybody should know Google hates that. And even other when you get digested by AI, because that's the new thing, of course, becoming AI optimized, you need to bring something to the table, and that's your expertise.
Right. So I think this process, because the thing is, I would do all this work, you know what I mean, manually,
Yep,
and so I'm still going through all the same steps, and I'm just using AI as a tool to help me do the same work that I would be doing faster, which I
yep,
think is cool. So that's what I've been working on. I also, as a part of this, started thinking through and researching all the different hosting options and thinking about what a managed service might look like. And I mean, I think what it all comes down to is, the ability to run the models and to
yep,
do so quickly. That's the whole shebang,
yep.
right? And everything else is just like hosting a website, right?
It is.
It's no
There's no
different.
different. There's been a React Red websites for now 18
Yeah,
versions, 19
right,
versions. There's been
right,
WordPress. It's
right,
but at the end of the day, it's all about that model sitting back there.
right. And from what I've seen, and again, early in the research process, but I definitely think the Adam Carters of the world, what they really want is ownership and control,
Yep.
right? And freedom, right? And some people, yes, they're just hardcore. I want to run it on my own machine. But I think that's actually the minority of people. And the majority of those Adam Carters, just if they can have the freedom, the control, and the ownership in the cloud, that's great because there's so many additional benefits to that. And I would say they also understand, and anyone who's run local systems extensively understands that you have to use the cloud for certain things. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, no matter how powerful your machine is, certain things you need to do in the cloud. And then also, if you want to be able to access it from anywhere, if you want other people to be able to use the products and services that you build on your own AI system, like, there needs to be a cloud component of all of this, and
Yeah.
it just needs to be done in a way where you're not having to give up ownership and control.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, making that um, making that ability to use API-based models, locally running models that are on your server via Olama, but it's hosted in the cloud, and being able to do that with speed and also without having to keep a machine up,
Yeah.
24/7 so that you're paying hundreds of dollars a month, for that is the whole thing. And it seems like from just chatting with the AI that not only is that possible, but no one's really doing a good job of it right now.
No, no, and because they do weird things, and the people, it's like either A, here's your interface, and but we're gonna pawn you off for your inferencing or your model over to OpenAI, which you're basically back in the same trap you were in before, where they control your data. You don't really manage anything. Um, but then it comes down to how do you have access to a decent sized model locally? And because really the 30s are getting good. I mean, really good. But if you're looking at doing anything close to the Claude level, the OpenAI level, you're hitting at least a 70. And running those at home is cost prohibitive because you'll end up spending easily a couple $1,000s, and that is for any kind of speed. And for the average person today, it's just not feasible.
Right. So anyway, I felt like, again, and I'm working on the guide, and just that's why I'm talking about this. I'm just learning about it, but
Yep.
I felt like there's not only a need for something, but I feel like the building blocks are there that we could put a prototype together using existing services
Mhm.
that are just like we're using them as ingredients, in our dish,
Yeah.
basically. We don't have to build out a lot of this infrastructure ourselves, or yeah, it felt to me like we could get a managed hosting service. We could stand a managed hosting service up pretty easily that we could start iterating on, in the future,
Yep.
and that's sort of aligns with what your thought process would be,
Yeah.
correct?
Because I've seen, yeah, because basically like with cards, you don't just because you have one model inferencing, it can do more than one user.
Yeah.
That's the key thing that people don't realize. Like for me, it's like mine sits there idle 99% of the time, maybe even closer to 100 than that. So it's, I read a few articles as this was starting to be developed where on a 3090 RTX by NVIDIA, which is 2 generations old, it was able to handle 1,000 people doing prompts, inferencing, easily without even blinking. So it's like if you take a higher generation card that can hold a better model, you could easily, you want to talk about professionally, what do 500 people and nobody should feel another user taking up resources.
Right. Right. Okay, cool. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't like completely on the wrong path there. And for anyone who's watching this, we're always local first, and we
Yep.
always believe no matter what you're doing, you should be able to run it locally if you have the power, the hardware to do that and want to do that. But that we can provide products and services around that, where
Yep.
you always maintain ownership and control and exit rights. Um, Also, another thing that I saw is like you can actually publish a hash where it shows exactly what the setup is, and
Yep.
like people can check that and everything, which is
Yep.
really cool. So there's a lot of really cool stuff here. But not something we're working on immediately, but something we're thinking about for the future. Okay. So the anything else you wanted to say on that before I move on?
One thing, because we were talking about earlier about the images, and we were like, hey, let's shelve this for a minute because like that. This becomes a point of why I think local is really going to stick out is right now Midjourney is basically under threat of a lawsuit from Disney. Tons of copyright images were used to create these image databases.
Right.
So, and when you're going against the money of Disney, it's not a matter if you fold, it's when you fold
Right.
because they'll take you all the way to the Supreme Court in a blink. And let's be honest, that mouse is pretty identifiable. That's just waiting to lose. It's just a matter of how much money you invest on losing. So,
Right.
but when you get into running on local, once you have this model downloaded, nobody can take it from you. You
Right.
have it. It's like that's for me. That's like we've talked about privacy and and that you own it. It's like that's always been the thing for me. It's like I have it here. Whatever Disney fight wants to get into, or Star Wars or Transformers, it just doesn't matter because if I decide that for a Christmas card I want to put Disney on there for my family, a little mouse image, I can do that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
technically, legally you can't, and we
well,
wouldn't.
yep,
But
yeah, exactly. Legally, I can't and whatnot, but
yeah.
it's like, but if it's just shared around the family, it's not. I'm not hurting anybody, and
Yeah.
I can, be creative like that. Where the mid journeys are about to be pounded. You have Meta. They were hit because they used copyright books to train llama. It's like, and they're in court right now over this. So
Yeah, and I
these
mean, I think
lawsuits.
this goes back to your point earlier too about like, the models, they're going to have to change the models. And if you have some workflow that even is not putting out anything that's like copyrighted or anything like that, and all of a sudden the model changes dramatically and your thing no longer works,
Yep.
for your business or whatever, you don't have to worry about that if you own and control the model.
Yep.
So great point. All right. Okay, so also from last week, so Beck, we've been updating on the community forums at community.braindrive.ai on the memory, and we also post all these videos there, by the way, and everything else that we're doing. So feel free to jump in there if you're watching and want to learn more about what we're doing on BrainDrive memory. And we put the whole memory system, which is going to be everything, about your personal AI system under your ownership and control, and adding context into chats and extracting context from chats to make that really a personal system. We have that working in the cloud right now with
Yep.
GPT-4.1. We tried it with local models, and even at a 32 billion, it's just not working right now. So we've shifted Beck's attention over to building chat with your documents
Yep.
functionality for BrainDrive. He's got a prototype of that to show me at 12. I'll record that call as I do always and post it on the forum. So fingers crossed we have
Yep.
something good to show there next week. And then we also have Navaneeth working on the BrainDrive model match, which is our model evaluator. One of the things that anyone who's spent any time in the local AI forums sees is people asking constantly over and over again, what's the model for X or Y, or will this model run on my machine and all that. And so we have a contractor working or a developer working on building an evaluator
Mhm.
system for this. And we decided to start with the use case of judging how good a model is at article summarization
Yep.
because it's kind of fact-based and something that, we can probably all generally agree upon what's good and not. And he showed me the prototype of that this
Yep.
morning. He's finishing up a few things and publishing the documentation and should have it over to me in the next couple hours. So I'll also be posting that on the forum for anybody who wants to see it. And just for this call, um, should be one more here. There we go.
Yep.
So you paste the article in, and then you paste the summary in of the article that you
Yep.
got from the model that we're looking to evaluate. And then he has three different judges here right now that we can try out and see which ones we look the best. Twin lock is the he has three models: DeepSeek, GPT-4o, and Claude Opus.
Yep.
And basically, what Twin lock does is those three models, they create a summary and they judge this summary, the twin,
Yep.
you know, and judge it based on these five criteria: coverage, how well, did it
Yep.
answer the questions, or how well did it summarize the article? Are the main points in there? Alignment, hallucination, relevance, bias, and toxicity. So these are the five you can adjust, and we'll have full documentation on this and a better walkthrough of what each of those things are. And it runs it through and makes that and gives it a score.
Yep.
And it would definitely be easier if I actually had the thing instead of screenshots. But okay, here's the scores for
Yep.
each of the. This is Judge Lock, which I'll talk about next, but it's the
Yep.
same thing you would see here. And it gives you an overall score for these. And then it outputs it all in JSON so we can pull it all into other tools and build a plugin off of this from for BrainDrive.
Yep.
And he did a couple of examples with me on the call. It gives you downloads of it, the metrics, the raw, everything. So we can build other tools on top of
Yep.
this. Judge Lock generates instead of a summary that's a twin.
Yep.
Judge Lock generates the top, I think, three questions that the article should answer,
Yep.
and then it judges the answers between the two. And then the third one, which I forget the name of it now, is a 50-50 weighting of twin and judge.
Okay.
And then you can
I,
change you can change all of this. So I thought this was pretty good first submission.
Seriously, it's like because anyway, I would probably evaluate. I would go at one of the two, or like I said, the combination of the two. But it would be like, hey, you do the work, and we'll see where Given that these models are better than anything else right
Right.
now, the top of the line. So that's a good starting point. And then the fact of hey, taking Google's principle, every piece of content should answer questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so
Yeah.
what questions do you formulate from this content and what's the answer does the content provide?
Right. Right. So yeah, so I was very pleased with this. Like I said, he's going to be finishing off the documentation and polishing up a couple things. He should have that over to us later today. And I'll put it on the forum and obviously send
Yep.
over to you, Dave. And we can talk about that more tomorrow. And we'll post that part of the recording on the forum too. But I think assuming things look pretty good in terms of this as a concept,
Yep.
I think the next thing, since we've done a sort of fact-based one, is to
Yep.
go with a little bit more of a subjective use case. And so, like, is this good at therapy? Like, is it a
Yep.
good therapy model? I think is the next, you know, and I think again, he was a little bit, go ahead.
No, I was complaining. My brain was going through. I was like giving us the top 50 or on the 50 use cases for AI therapy and chat. It sits at number one, so you'd have to.
Right. And then I think we can do some of the persona models that people want,
Yep,
off of that and judge what's the best for that. And we can have it at different sizes. And this also seems like something that like once we're comfortable with it could be fairly automated, even the
yep.
like even the report and like why this is the best and blah blah blah. So I was pretty excited with this.
That's why it's like when I originally came up with this months ago, it was like
Yeah,
this could open a can of worms that nobody has ever touched right
right,
here. It's like and desperately needs because as you pointed out, Reddit where we both hang out at every week, maybe sometimes every day, it's like what is the best model for doing X?
correct.
What's the best model for doing this or what's the best of this size type
Right,
thing? And so hey, to have that question answered for people that's a no-brainer for
right,
me.
right. Cool. So yeah, so that's that. I was excited on that. I think that's the main stuff for this week for the dev call update. You want to just let's just go ahead and tweak the roadmap as our last thing here.
Okay.
Let me bring that up.
Let me swap this over. So five.
Let's just see here. Roadmap. All right, let me share again. Okay. Yeah, so right now,
Yeah, we're not even touching any of that right now because we've been solely focused on developers, stuff like that. And that's mostly all of Katie Carter land right there.
okay, so let's just put on hold here then.
Yep. And in fact, we want to put a new five up there. So and that way we'll put the developer stuff there as a replacement, and then we will find a home for the old five.
All right, I'm just gonna put it down here for
Yep.
now. Okay, so let's all right. What's
If we want to add the one that's already done, we can put encryption.
well, what's the goal here? I like how you
The
have
okay,
goal.
the goal is we'll call it developer data workflow.
Okay.
And so the first entry on that would be the
Well, this
encryption.
is actually the title. Okay, so
Yep.
what's the end goal? What do we want developers?
Uh, this will give the developers the ability to not just have their plugin, but to have a means of there's a right word basically a living plugin now because this data is stored and it works with it now and works with the system. So that's the end goal of this one because then the developers will have everything they need to start building organisms.
Okay, and what is that for layman's terms? What does
Well,
that mean?
for okay, basically right now, if a developer went into this, like the settings, plug in and like that, you can build it, but you're only existing with the data that I have opened up for you, type thing. When five gets done, you would be able to have your own idea, have your own place to store the data. You don't have to worry about building it out as a developer or anything like that. The table structure will be there to handle it. All you have to do is come with the idea or the dream,
Okay.
as we like to say. So that's what five is all about, and it handles it from the plugin aspect, from the page aspect, and then from the conversational or response aspect.
Okay. Um,
I just didn't have a title for it. That's why I called it an organism because now your whatever you develop can become a living, breathing entity in my
okay, and
mind.
what do you think are the
First thing was encryption because whatever you want to do, you may want to have it secured in some way. So we've already handled that into the mix where you can now encrypt anything you want. And it's on a field level so that you're not getting crazy with encryption. You're just saying, hey, I want to encrypt this field, and you run along your way.
Okay.
Second thing, which now we'll get to the stuff that's not done yet. I call it plugin data. That's the ability for a plugin to have a place to put its own data where it can get it at any moment in time.
Okay.
Page data. This is where if you develop a page with several plugins, one plugin doesn't matter. Your page will be able, its constant state will be saved in a location so that when you change devices or you come back later, it just doesn't matter. You'll be able to start back up right where you were.
Okay.
Then we get to the response or conversational data. It will be locked into a page so that if you were having a conversation with BrainDrive Concierge, that conversation will not bleed over into another plugin or app. They will
Page
be that.
specific.
Yep.
Okay.
And when we get to that level, then I want to, I don't know if the dynamic page responsiveness, I think that's hitting a little heavy for 5, and it gets out of the scope of 5 being more data orientated. So
Okay.
we'll leave that. Yep. So we're basically done right there. When we get that finished right there, then, oh, sorry, we forgot one thing. Personas.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
We don't need the encryption part on personas though.
And let's talk about personas.
Yep.
What you mentioned there was
Yep.
maybe some stuff that we needed to talk about. So
I'm
just give a,
Yep. I'm going to do personas right now as a part of the core
okay.
because of the fact that everything, if we were doing an evaluator, all the way up to if we were doing just, hey, write an email for me, the persona would come in play. So for to do it in the core would give the ability for every developer who comes along afterwards to have a set of standards to always look at, and you don't have to worry about some third party changing those standards. So
Okay.
this will just be consistency across the board, and the best way to approach that would be putting it in the core for right now. We might change later, and we can do that, but for
Yeah.
right now, that's a good starting point on the core. And it also doesn't isolate, where if a developer came up and said, I want to do Personas 2.0 and or Billy's Personas or whatever you want to call it, he could come along afterwards. He could develop whatever he wants, and the core would sit there. You install Billy's little Persona plugin, and they can use that as well. And it doesn't change that the standard is right there.
Okay.
Um, so we that was when I was the more I thought about it, it was like that just gives every developer a good foundation to build upon.
Okay.
And
Cool.
as we said, the conversation last on Friday. We'll put that in the BrainDrive Studio section of the dropdown, so it'll be readily available to be found as well.
Okay, good. All right. And what are we thinking in terms of timeline for
I'm
job?
go- this is not going to be a 1 week. This is probably going to be a 2 week jump. And to get all 4 of those done.
Okay. And then where do you think we should put the old point 5 dashboard?
Let's see the installer. Ooh, I would probably put it because it needs to happen before 6 does. So maybe we call the old one 5.5. It doesn't need to be a solid number and whatnot as moving along versions. So we have 5 would hit us there, and then 5.5 would be the desktop, or yeah, the dashboard, um, and that functionality, and then we can move straight into the installer.
Oop. 5.5.
Did you copy? Yep. Okay, you did. Yep, 5.5.
Okay. And all right. I mean, once we're past these two though, like the next 2 or 3 weeks, like
Yep.
and we're on to installer.
Yep, because that'll give us time to get the installer, some testing, some different people installing it and such like that. Um, and have a great day. Or pull our hair out.
Yeah, right. All right, fantastic. So
Yep.
I will update I need to update the roadmap on the GitHub too. So we should probably just start working off of that one, but update roadmap on GitHub. Okay, cool.
Yep. And and like I said, once we get to 5, that will trigger the update of the BrainDrive chat plugin to include the persona stuff right on the top, the chat history drop into the bottom, like we discussed on Friday, because all the pieces will be there for it to take place.
All right, very good. Anything else for the dev call, or should we end it there?
Um, no, I think that covers it. I think it's going to be a great 2 weeks.
All righty, sounds good. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody.
Thank you.
Visit the forum over at community.braindrive.ai and jump in and respond, comment, etc. We're there to answer all your questions and comments personally. Take care. Have a great